Well, I am so excited everyone's here. Sometimes when you do a series of classes, people go to the first one and then they're like, meh. So I am very glad you guys are here. We are doing class 2, planning your garden layout, crops, and planting schedules. There's a lot of different things we're going to try to get through today. My goal is to get through some of it and then have time at the end to ask questions, share experiences, what's worked, what's not worked, all of those types of things. I realized as I was putting this class together, I've never done this specific class. Like, I've touched on this idea in other classes, but I've never actually put together a 2-hour class on it. It's supposed to be an hour and a half. It took me a long time, and I realized I am learning just as much. So this is for me. You guys just get to be here and listen to what I've learned. But I'm like, the Heavenly Father knows what He's doing, because He told me to do these classes, and now I'm realizing it's for me. So if you have questions, please ask them if they're pertinent to the thing that we're talking about. If it triggers a question that's not exactly about what we're talking about, please write it down, and then we'll try to get to it. I have clipboards, I have graph paper, I have scratch paper, and I have line paper all up there if you need that. And if you don't have a pen, I'm sure we can scare up a couple for you. And we're going to get going. So I'm super excited. My goal is to walk you through all the things that'll take you to go from garden plotting to having a successful garden at the end. And some of us are starting off with nothing. Some of us have amazing gardens, and you could be up here teaching the class instead of me. So the first thing I have learned is that if you don't have a why, you won't have keep going. And so if you are growing food out of fear, like during COVID, a lot of people started gardens, and they had more time. They were afraid because the stores were empty. They started gardens. If you go back and ask that same set of people who were all gung-ho and learning, how many of them are still doing it? Sadly, a lot of them have fallen off because that fear factor has left. And so now you can go back to the grocery store, and it's a whole lot easier to go get a green pepper from the grocery store than it is to grow one, isn't it? But if your why has roots in something greater or bigger than that, then that will keep you going and keep your motivation. So Timothy and I explored our why, and about 15 years ago, God impressed upon us the idea that we need to focus more on adding food plants to all my pretty flowers and not just do flowers. I have grown flowers my whole entire life. Flowers are great. Timothy's like, meh. Food, he's interested in. So he was a little bit more on board with that part. But as part of kind of just increasing our stewardship, how do we take care of the planet? How do I respond to all of the pressure I was getting as a master gardener of people are bad for the world and people should leave kind of idea, where that conflicts with the Heavenly Father's of, I have given you this as a gift for you to live in and use. And so some of that came out of there. So God said so is a pretty good why. Homegrown produce has a higher nutritional content than that of the store because they can't pick it right. It won't make it to you if they pick it right. Valuable skill set. You know, when the apocalypse comes and only so many people can get into the place of safety, we're like, we know how to grow food. They might let us in. But it's also something we can share. It's something that keeps our brains young. We're always learning something. It's a good thing. And then I love growing plants. I just like plants. I will always like plants. Me and Farah go geek out at the place she works at. Pretty cool. All right.
Got more stuff in.
No, I don't visit you. So your dream list. What do you want to do in your garden? Even if you've been gardening forever, is there something you've always wanted? Is there something you could add? Is there something that you need? This is a list of all the things you could ever want. Justin Rhodes just did a permaculture special thing, and in his list he had Sasquatches and unicorns that fart rainbows, in his list of things he wanted. It didn't make the priority list, of course, but it was the idea of just these, cool things. I would love to have a palm tree. Is it ever going to happen? Not in Michigan. But it's just fun things, everything you want. I want a table out in my garden so I can have a place to set things down. I want a wash station out in the garden where all the water goes back into the garden. I want a pond. I want all the different things that you could want. And then when you fill this out, you can look back at it as you're planning your garden. You can make decisions based on, well, maybe not this year, but next year, maybe I can work to add something. If you have little kids, your whole yard can't be a garden because a ball will then destroy half the garden, right? And then your kids can't play. You might need lawn. You might need parking space. You might need, you know, a boundary if you have a dog, or if you're trying to keep the geese and the deer and the turkeys out of your garden. All these different things would be added into your list. And this is where there's no limits. You're not worried about money. You're not worried about all those things. You're just like, what would be wonderful to have? Because eventually you might get there. You never know. Okay, so homework. I sent a whole bunch of worksheets. Well, it is one very big worksheet that I use to put together my garden. And so on there, if it's helpful to you, you fill out those questions, and I actually added a couple of things to it to help me plan, because I realized that I was focusing only on the bad stuff, like what went wrong in the garden last year. And I wasn't focusing on like what went well in the garden. What did we do good? What did we want to repeat? And by focusing only on the bad stuff, you tend to bring yourself down and you destroy your motivation. But to focus on the good and then the blessings that you got. And so last year, our garden, we had a Shemitah year, which means you're supposed to, like, you know, not do anything. And we had a volunteer tomato that, like, gave us tomatoes, little cherry tomatoes. It was great. I had Lancino kale that did not go to seed. Kale is a biennial. It's supposed to go to seed the second year. It provided us with greens. I had like 7 plants. Provided us with greens the entire summer. Never planted them. They didn't go to seed. I don't know what's wrong with them, but when they do go to seed, I'm going to save seed from those puppies because they were great. It was a blessing. We tried a reservoir pot experiment, and that had mixed results on it. And so we did some different things, and this reminds us and remembers what we do. Another thing, just take pictures. Like, if you do something cool, take a picture of it. Because later you can look back and go, oh, that was glorious. And I have a couple pictures in here from, the majority of the pictures in this are all mine. I'm like, oh, I did good. I want to do that again. And it's great. It's a wonderful thing to remind you of. So I think here's my Shemitah year, volunteer tomato, the pot experiment, and here's the pictures. So these are my great big giant blue pots. Oh, how tall are those guys? They're about this big, maybe? Some of them? About that big, about that wide. And then we put a 2-gallon bucket in the bottom of them with a reservoir in it, and then you could fill it up. And then sometime in August, you can see the massive mess of my flowers and things. There's my kale that was very happy. All right. So what do you want from your garden? That's another question to ask. Make a list of all the things. So tomatoes to eat and freeze. That is, for us, top of the line. There's nothing like a tomato off the vine. Even the farmer's market doesn't quite make it because they have to pick them a little early. Lots of greens. I don't want to buy anything from the store. Cucumbers to eat fresh. Salsa. And pesto, which needs a lot of basil. So what will you guys eat? That's another thing to think about. Like, if you never eat eggplant, but you plant eggplant, is that eggplant going to get used? It's kind of cool. But I made that mistake. I had eggplant. It was beautiful. I don't know what to do with it. We didn't eat it. I finally gave it away to somebody who was super stoked about it. Okay, so plan to make that happen. Failing to plan is planning to fail. That's just sort of, if you don't have a follow through, it's not going to happen. So here's just a couple of them. My salsa, I need to have peppers, onions, and tomatoes. I need to maybe freeze some of them to hold them until I get enough of the rest of them in order to do it. That I have to be prepared to harvest, freeze, and get ready so I can do all the different things. Pesto, what do I need for pesto? I need basil, olive oil, and walnuts. So it means I need to be harvesting enough. It's amazing how much basil you gotta pick to make a little thing of pesto. And then I usually freeze it. So I need to do multiple crops. I need to be harvesting my basil, and you can harvest it down about 3 times before the basil plant finally gives up, and then you have to start over with new plants. So that's a succession planting thing I need to plan for. Okay, and then all of the things that I want to do in my garden, I plan that out. I make sure I have what do I need to do to follow through with that. And then garden goals. I do not want to buy any lettuce from the grocery store this summer, like spring, summer. It's $6 a box for this stuff. I don't want that. So I'm going to try to do that. I don't want to buy crops that I'm already growing from the farmer's market or grocery store. So if I'm already growing kale, I should not be coming home from the farmer's market with a big bunch of kale, even though it looked beautiful on the stand. You know? I don't want food to spoil in the garden or in the kitchen. This is something I am not very good at yet, because I love to grow things, but I'm not really good on the cooking part or the processing part yet. And so that's a thing I need to grow in. I want to make things pretty. I want it to be lovely. I want it to be neat and tidy. I want there to be lots of flowers and color and all that stuff. And then this is a new goal, is be in the garden every morning for 15 minutes to just enjoy my garden, to take stock, to look at it, because the best fertilizer for a gardener is the gardener being in the garden themselves. Your garden will do so much better if you're in it every day. And then my next one is I want to make our set of compost bins. So these are our goals, and I have to plot through how that's all going to work. What are your goals going to be? What do you want to do in your garden? And then I want to make oyas for the orchard, which is a clay pot that you bury, and then you fill it up, and then the pot lets the water out slowly. I live on a sand dune. There will never ever be too much water for my sand dune. And so this is one way that we can try to get some water to our smaller trees in the orchard, which are not happy right now. Okay, your space. So where your space goes, some of you may already have your space already set, like you got the perfect location. Some of you may be setting up to where your location is going to be, or you might need a different location because there might be issues with your location. Probably one of the top things that's really, really hard to change is sun. Because if you have humongous trees in the way, unless you're cutting down the trees, that's not going to happen. Or if you have houses in the way, or a fence in the way, or something like that. So knowing where your sun comes from, and do you have enough sun? So 6 to 8 plus hours is what you need to grow anything that puts a fruit on it. So if it makes a fruit, it has to have that much sun. You can get away with less, but you're not going to have a very happy plant. 4 to 6 hours for leaf plants, and that is anything that's your greens, your brassicas, kohlrabi, cabbage, kale, all of those types of things will survive in that and do okay in that. Especially if it's super hot, your more tender greens will be happier with more shade. But anything less than 4 hours, you're growing moss, you're growing hostas, you're growing things that typically aren't a typical garden plant. Water. Water is super important because it's heavy. It's 8 pounds for a gallon of water, and that adds up super fast when each plant might need a gallon of water itself on a hot day. So where is your water at? How are you getting it to the garden? How are you watering it once you get to the garden? Are you going to be doing sprinklers? Are you doing drip irrigation? Are you hand watering? All those questions. Do you have standing water in your garden? So like Mr. Jean has clay and Bethany has a stream that goes through her garden every spring. Like, what are you going to do with those things? If you have too much water, how do you get rid of it? How do you redirect it? When do you water? So if you're going to water with a sprinkler, you want to do that either early morning or late evening. How is that going to happen? Are you going to go out first thing in the morning? What's it going to be tied to so that you keep doing that? So your plan is made and created. Because if you don't know how you're going to do something, you won't do it. And then set up your bed so you can do this easily. So like I've seen some people have these really crazy beds, and when they put a sprinkler on it, they can't actually water everything because there's things blocking, and they can't get the sprinkler and the hose close enough to wherever the beds are. And so all of those things come into context too when you think about how big is your sprinkler. Like, you know, if your sprinkler goes 25 feet wide and your beds are 40 or 30, you have to do a double whammy, or you have to angle it, or whatever. All of those different fun things. Wind. For us, because we live on the lakeshore, we have a lot of wind. And we thankfully have a block of trees, but sometimes those trees get moving enough that I'm like, please don't come down on my yard. But where's your wind coming from? Do you have a fence that creates a downdraft of buffering wind that hurts? Because when wind hits a solid object, it goes up, over, and then crashes down on the other side, depending on the height, so many feet out. That you can have places where your plants are just getting massacred by wind, even though they're technically not in line with the wind. So your wind blocks are important if you need that. If you have buildings that create a tunnel system of wind, and you just have a 30-mile-an-hour wind coming down your alleyway before it hits you, that can cause a lot of damage as well. If you don't understand why your plants are all like this, where's the wind coming from? And then that also tells you like where your snow is coming from. So if you know your snow piles up really high on this side of the house, probably don't plant your blueberry bushes there, because they're going to get massacred by the snow every year, right? So thinking about things like that will help you put your garden plants where they need to be, or maybe help you solve problems. Okay. Any questions? I'm running through this fast so we can get to the fun stuff. All right, your space, the fun part, maps, you get to draw. So this is my lot. I am at the end of a cul-de-sac, so you can see the curve on the front. I have 77 feet across the front, and I have 347 across the back. And I'm a flat little sort of triangle thing. And I'm on a sand dune. So the front of my house is a single-story house. The back of my house is a two-story house. So I have some serious angles in there, which you can see with the red lines. That's my topographical thing. There is 9 feet difference between the front of my house and the back of my house, which makes it great for gravity feed watering, because I can have my rainbows on top and everything below can get watered. But it can be difficult because I have some steep slopes, which we have terraced and done things like that to it. So that's my property. What does your property look like? And Timothy is a surveyor, so I have a little bit of a heads up in amazingness, because he plotted all this out. But like if you go onto Google Maps or you look for plot maps for your county, you can get your land, and you can also get the elevations and things like that for it as well. And then you can just start playing with it. So use a tape measure, walk it off. Like, where's your pipes? Where's your underground stuff, if that's an issue? Where's your big trees? Where's the light coming from, going from where the trees are? All of those things you can take into account, because you don't want to plant your garden on top of something that, for me, I have 15 feet along the right-hand side there. That is a waterway. So if they ever decide that something's wrong with the water line that goes from my street to the street behind us, they have the right to rip out everything. And I've got some apple trees in there. I've got some 40-foot trees in there. Like, they could come in and just take all that out if they need to access that water line. And so knowing where people will need access on your property would be good to do, because it would be super sad if I put a lot of money into growing an orchard down that line and then it got ripped out because the water line broke, and you don't want all those people to not have water. So all of those different things go into that. Some of you who live in the boonies, you can do whatever you want. But sometimes those of us who live in town have restrictions put on us, and you have to dig up all your bushes on the corner of the road. So, yeah. Oh, telephone poles too. They get really ornery if you plant a tree underneath the telephone lines and it goes up into the lines. They will come and chop your tree down, and they don't care. All right, so the next place is the best place to put your garden in your property. So there's a thing called zones in permaculture, and zone 0 is your house. You are in your house all the time, every day. Zone 1 is the next space you visit the most. It's usually right around your house. It's very close to your house. It's less than 100 feet away. For some of us, that's even a smaller amount if we have a small yard. And then you have Zone 2, which is the next visited space, and then Zone 3, and then they work your way out. For us, you want to put your garden where it's easy to get to and you can see it a lot. And so for me, because if it's not in front of my face, it does not exist kind of thing. If I'm not there seeing it all the time, it's so easy to lose track of something. And so put your garden in Zone 1. And also, if it has, you want to have less than 5% slope. Why do you think that is? You don't want it to have too much slope. Water runs off? Your water runs off. So like the perfect level for water to move water, they found in the Roman aqueducts, is 4%. If they had a 4% slope, they could run water for miles, hundreds of miles, with no impediment. And so if you have more than 5%, your water is gone. It will never stay. It will never settle. And so terrace it, build it up a little bit, that kind of a thing. Just losing water, you will never just lose water. You will lose whatever the water takes with it on its way out. And so if you've put down nutrition, if you've put down humus, if you've put down soil, that is gone with the water, and wherever the water ends up, it's going to have amazing nutrition out of it. Like all the deltas from rivers have amazing bottom ground. That's all of the water stole that. Let's get a map. And then measurements of where you want your garden. So this is, you can be really sketchy and then get more detailed. I always use graph paper. So I brought a bunch of graph paper. I found it in a secondhand store and God nudged me like, hey class, like sweet. So take graph paper and play with it. Map it all out. And sometimes when I want to organize something, I make little shapes and then I play with them and push them around on my paper. You can make a million mistakes on paper. It doesn't cost anything but reshifting. If you do it wrong in the garden, you learn something, but you also get the opportunity to put a lot of sweat, effort into switching it afterwards. And so we're trying to save you that. And, all right. So we're getting now into some of the nitty gritty. So rotation and layout. Rotation is the thing you do where you organize your crops into different families. So the Linnaeus organization, everybody's in a different family and the Latin name. If you do not know the Latin name of whatever your plant is, look on the plant label, look on your seed packet, or go on Google and just say, hey, what is a tomato? Tomatoes in the Solanaceous family. Anything that's in the Solanaceous family generally has the same pests, has the same diseases, has the same needs that that plant group needs. So it's a practice of planting different crops sequentially on the same plot of land to improve soil health, optimize nutrients in the soil, and combat pest and weed pressure. So a lot of times we will have people who just plant the ground and then they take off the harvest, and they plant the ground, they take off the harvest, and they're never planting in a future forward thinking thing. Because if you plant well, you can actually regenerate your soil as you're pulling nutrient out. And so not only by just putting down compost and your humus, you're also, the plants themselves can add back into the soil. Either by, like nitrogen fixing legumes is a really big one, but also by like chopping down what the plant, after the plant is done, you chop it down and you leave it, and that goes back into the soil and helps regenerate it as a green manure. So by rotating, organizing your garden into the different families, you can then move things around. So for me, I have to move my stuff around because the sand is not extremely nutritious. Anything I put on it goes right through it. And so I have to continually keep adding to it and changing my plants around. On the paperwork that I gave you, the worksheets, I have everything listed out with all of the plant, like all the common plants in all the common, in their families listed out.
Do you have more of those?
I didn't print anything out. I sent everybody the links to that.
Can you send me them?
You have it in email. Okay. So, but if you don't find it, it's probably in your spam. A lot of people's, it went to their spam. If you don't find it, I can send it to you again. It's 11 pages, I think, and so Timothy was like, we don't want to print 100 sheets of paper. But yes, I do have it, and it has all of that figured out for you, and then the oddball one that you figured out you want to grow that I didn't put on there, it'd be really easy to figure out which one it goes into. Depending on the health of your soil determines how much you have to be a stickler for this. For a lot of people with tomatoes, there's a lot of tomato issues that if you don't move your plants around, you will get Vercillium wilt if you don't have a resistant variety of it. However, if your soil is super healthy and you've done a good job planting, Mr. Gene doesn't move his tomatoes because he's got them in a spot and they're happy. And so his soil is healthy enough, it fights off those diseases, which is amazing. But generally, that is a good practice to do. And, Rodell Institute said it, so anything they say, I pretty much, they're good guys. So here's a 4-year crop rotation. If you go online and look up rotating crops, all of those types of things, you will find charts like this. You don't have to necessarily copy all of it down, but the rhyme that goes is beans, greens, fruits, roots. So beans is your nitrogen fixing. Your greens and your brassicas kind of go together. And then your fruits, which is your tomatoes, your squash, your cucumbers, all of that kind of stuff. And then your roots, or everything that grows down. So those are your potatoes and your radishes and garlic and onions and sort of things like that. That's not specifically all the different families put together, because potatoes are actually in the solanaceous family. So technically they would go with your solanaceous family bunch, but because they're underground, they do different things, I guess.
Wait, what are peppers then?
Peppers would be solanaceous, that would be a fruiting. So anything that's a fruit, we call a lot of them vegetables, but like tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, those are all, corn is technically a fruit botanically. And then anything that is a vegetable is you're eating the plant of it or the flower of it before it actually has a seed inside of it. And so I always get on my soapbox every once in a while. Like, that's not a fruit.
All of these in the boxes then would be like companion plants too?
They have the same needs. They're not necessarily all companion plants that they make life better for the other ones in that group, but they all are pulling the same things or needing the same things. And so legumes add nitrogen to the soil. So all of those plants, when you put them in that area, is going to leave little nodules of nitrogen in your soil. So then when you go to your greens and brassicas, which are pulling a lot of nitrogen from the soil, they're going to be like, oh, thank you very much for leaving the little deposits of nitrogen. And then you go to the fruit, and it needs ample phosphorus, which the greens haven't necessarily been gobbling up, but if your soil is healthy, there will be enough of that. Then you get to your roots, which are a lighter feeder. They're like, we'll take the leftovers, we'll be okay. And then you get back to your greens, which then dump back into the soil. And hopefully you're still adding, you know, your mulches, you're adding your hummus. Would you like some hummus and crackers and dirt? And adding into the soil the whole time as well. So you're keeping that microbiology happy. But you're kind of stacking, you know, you make a lot of soup in the wintertime because you're heating up the house, you've got the root vegetables all in stock. You don't make soup in the summertime, right? Because you've got all these other things. So that's generally that idea. You're using what you have. Now, if you don't follow this, you won't die. The plants won't die. It'll be okay. It's just one of those things to keep in mind as you're setting up your system, that if you do this, it can be beneficial and helpful as you move forward. And then the whys of the science of that behind that. All right. So, that layout came from Homestead and Chill. It's a really good blog, but it's Homestead and Chill. So kind of laid back person, but really, really good blog on that and had all that stuff. Okay, so layout. Layouts will be unique to your space and needs. So my yard is sand. I can't have a normal regular garden because I can't keep enough fertilizer and energy inputs into that for just walking on space. So for me, beds make a lot more sense. Also for my personality, I handle beds a lot better than a 30-foot row of daunting kind of thing. I'm like, I can do a bed, sit in a square, I can keep my bed happy. And so for me, my personality, what I have, that's what works best for me. People in other situations that have large gardens, large spaces, different places, your layout may look completely different. You might be having to make the city happy with your front yard. Or you might have acres and can do whatever you want. So those are all different things. So I'm going to go over a whole bunch of different things. No one of them is absolute, this is what you should do, this is best. It's just they're different ways of doing things, and whatever one works best for you, as long as you're growing plants, we're all cheering you on. Okay? So one thing that I do tend to do is I plant in mass. So I don't have rows. Because of my beds, I don't need rows. I don't need to worry about compacting my soil because I'm outside of the space that growing is. If you're doing like long single rows, a lot of times that was created because of tractors, because of the need for being able to run a combine down a row or plow something or put the seed in mechanically. That's where that has come out of gardening, differentiating from past years and the way they used to garden. And so you don't have to have a row, but if it works really well for you to have rows, then by all means do rows. So whatever works for you. However you do it, the goal is to plant tightly enough your plants that they shade out the ground around them and they suppress their weeds themselves as they're growing. Because nature or the Heavenly Father created the way of it abhors bare soil. It never wants to be naked. So that's why weeds come up. It's like, there's empty ground, grow something. Because it is unhealthy to have bare soil. It's not good for the ground, it gets too hot, it kills the microbes in it, it actually gets solarized in some ways. So bare ground is bad. So that's why you always want to have some sort of mulch on it, some sort of covering on it, some sort of plant growing on it, and then you'll suppress weeds naturally that way. And then one big thing is don't walk on the soil you're wanting to grow in, because soil needs to have holes. And when you walk on it, you're compressing all the holes out of it that hold water and air. You need air in your soil. We can't live underground because there's like not big enough air holes, but all the little guys down there need oxygen too. And they need those holes in the space. So when you step on it, you go, and then you can't, they can't breathe. And then your aisle size, like what do you need to move down an aisle? Are you taking a wheelbarrow down your aisles? So if you have beds or rows, or however you're doing it, do you need to get a wheelbarrow down there? Do you need to be able to carry 2 watering cans? How wide are you with watering cans? How wide are you with a kid on your side? You know, like when it all grows, if you start with a 2-foot row and you're planting all these baby plants, you're like, I got all the room in the world. And then everything grows and you're like down to 6 inches of this between things. You know, to kind of take that into account too. Is what will let you get down there easily so you will do it instead of going, those are a lost cause. We'll see you in the fall when y'all die, you know. Let's keep going. Do you need a fence? We need a fence. We live in Wakazi Woods. All of our deer are domesticated and not afraid of people at all. They just 10 feet. If you're 10 feet away, they're okay. They're not afraid of us. So we had to get an 8-foot fence around our little suburban lot. Do you need a spot to sit? If you go out in the garden, is it far enough away from your house that it'd be nice to eat your lunch out there? Do you want to put your water bottle? Do you want to journal or pray or read out there? You know, some gardens are amazingly beautiful. What do you want to do out there? Do you want a place to set your stuff? Table to set produce on, processing station. We found that underneath of our deck we have a really nice potting bench Timothy built for me. And it works great. Like, we just dump stuff on there. Like, we pick it up, it's in the shade, it's next to the water hose, so we can run water over it, get all the dirt out. All that water goes back into some part of the garden. And then I'm taking produce upstairs that's been chilled, it's been cooled down already, and it's been cleaned, and so I'm not dumping all that sand dirt water down into my sewer water. You know, so for us that really helps. It made it easy, and then we even process food down there sometimes too. Okay, so here's container gardening. I got a variegated basil, some alyssum, and what's that one? What's the rose one? It's a rose. Moss rose. Yes, thank you. Moss rose in there. So that's a food and beneficial insect and pretty one, right? And then the other one is my peppers from a long time ago. Here's some of my raised beds. All the ones in the bottom corner are gone now, and I have a different kind of bed. The ones in the top are still there, and then we're going to redo the ones on that side. But yeah, so everything changes too. Here is a raised bed. It is a very valid raised bed. You just stab a bunch of holes in the bottom of your bag, cut the top so that you don't cut too much. Plant whatever you want in there. The plant roots will go down into the soil underneath. You'll kill the grass under it. And if you decide you like it, you just cut the bag and you pull it out and your soil's there. If you decide you don't like it, you just pull the whole thing away, reseed, and you're good to go. So this is one I had in there. It's not a joke, but it's kind of funny to people who have real gardens. For people in the city who've never gardened before. And this to them was a huge deal. Like, they didn't thought, I can do that. I can do one bag of dirt. And you can start little. That's one little tomato plant. Imagine getting a little kid who's never eaten a real tomato before, gets to go out and he'll want to do this again the next year, right? Square foot gardening is another way that you can do something small. It's another process of doing things. And then vertical gardening. If you don't have a lot of room, go up. That is 6 feet of purple potted pole beans. That's our favorite bean. They're about that long and they're purple. Yummy, yummy. They never make it inside. We just eat them all outside. Alright, the next thing you have to talk about is your planting schedule. When can you put your plants in the ground? That depends. It depends on the plant. It depends on where you live. So where I live, I am zone 6B. I am very much influenced by the maritime climate. Coming off the lake, my springs are way late, but my falls go forever. And so you can find out where you live by going to USDA plant hardiness zones, or just call it like zone map. Put in your zip code, and it will tell you what you are. So I am frost risk October 23 through April 29. Certain frost is November 6 through April 15. Frost free is May 12, which is about Mother's Day, through October 7. So that tells me how much time I have between frost, which is 177 days on average. That gives me a ton of information. And so now I know what plants and when I can put in the ground. Okay, so how and where are you going to get your plants? So just because you're growing a garden doesn't mean you have to start everything from seed. And anyone who tells you that starting, buying plants from the store is a cop-out, I'm like, don't discourage people. Anywhere you get your plants, as long as you're getting a plant in the ground, the more you learn, the better you'll get at it, and the greater end goal will be. So if you are stuck, my niece and nephew are going to Alaska, and they're not coming back until the middle of May. And they're like, oh, well, we just can't have a garden this year. I'm like, no, you can absolutely have a garden. You're just going to need to buy plants. You're going to be buying your tomato plants, you can buy your squash plants, you can buy some pepper plants, you can put all that in. That's actually the perfect time to put it in May, in the end of May. It's great, you can still have a garden. They were thinking, I have to start everything from seed, I have to, I won't have anything in the garden yet, and that's not necessary. So, where are you going to get your plants? What do you have capacity for? What do you have the ability to do? For me, I have grow lights, I have all of the stuff, I've got a greenhouse. Like, for me to not start plants from seed would be really really obnoxious and knocking the blessings that I've been given from the Heavenly Father and all of the stuff I have. For someone who has a north-facing window who wants to grow a tomato plant, they should not start from seed. They're not going to do well. They're not going to have enough light. They should go buy a plant. And that's okay. How many frost-free days do you have? So I have more frost-free days than I'm thinking you might have, Jean, because you're further north, you're further inland, so you don't have the buffer. Others of you who live further inland or further north, you might have some different schedules as well. And then days to maturity is going to tell you. So I think I'm going to get to that part. So you can do seeds, you can do plants, you can do a combination of it. Some things want to be grown with seeds outside, some of them need to be started inside. That days to maturity will tell you. And so this is a Kellogg's breakfast tomato. This is an incredible, amazing, yummy tomato. It's 85 days to maturity before it starts its first plant. Can I technically grow it from seed in my garden? Yes. How many days will I actually get to harvest a tomato off of that though? Like 1 month, maybe 6 weeks. Is that enough time to harvest tomatoes? Absolutely not. I want to push that way ahead. And so this one is one I'm going to start from seed, and then we're going to plant it as soon as the ground is warm enough, which is more important than the frost almost. If it's not warm enough, my tomato is going to sit there and go, I'm cold, and I can do nothing. And you're hurting yourself back. So 85 days is super important. And then all of the other things sprouts in 7 to 14 days. So that means if I want to start my tomato plant and have this big of a plant by this time, I'm putting my seed in the ground, I have to add that germination amount time to that too. I've had them start in 3 days. Perfect, great seed, perfect conditions and stuff like that. But generally, if there's a cold breeze, if my soil wasn't warm enough, if my water I put in there wasn't get warm enough, I have to schedule that adding on to it as well. And then the ideal temperature tells you that information, how deep to plant it, what your spacing is, 24 inches. And then frost hardy, no, it will die. First frost, it will be gone. And then this is the Latin for it. So it's that solanaceous group, and then lipo is like I shouldn't try to even pronounce that. That's your tomato family group inside of that. So this gives you a ton of information, and you will have this on all your seeds. Any good seed company will have all this information. You will know right away what you need to do with that. I will be starting a bunch of these in the spring, a month, in a month, and you can't get this at the grocery store. So if you want this, you're going to have to make friends with somebody that can grow them, kind of thing, or trade. The other example I have is a radish. So this guy goes from seed to happy in 28 days. 3 to 6 days for sprouting, right? So that's a month. Can I grow him in my time outside? How many of him can I grow? A bunch of them. I could probably get 4 harvests of this, or if I go every 2 weeks, I could get even more out of it. How many radishes do you want to eat? Kind of thing. And so this one is a great one that you can buy a packet of seed, you can plant it, 2 weeks later plant another little row, 2 weeks later plant another little row, and you can have succession planting with this guy. You can plant him around things, under things, between things. He can get tucked wherever. And so knowing that about this plant means he kind of doesn't take up any space. You can plant him around your tomato plants. You can go wherever he would be happy. And since he's a root plant, there's no fruit, he gets away with more shade. And so he can go like with your lettuces. So just those types of things, think about when you look at what you want to grow and where you can put things and tuck things in.
You can plant them as markers.
Plant them as markers, explain that.
Like if you plant your squash in hills, and they take 14 days to come up. You put a radish in there, and 3 days later, you'll know where your hill is.
Yes. So when we get to succession planting, we'll talk a little bit about that. But yes, so planting things as markers is a really good way to remember what has already been planted if you didn't take really good notes when you put them in the ground, or just where exactly it is that they are. And then they will be done and ready to go long before the squash takes over that full hill. So you could be harvesting radishes out of that hill and be out of the way when the squash becomes unnavigable later on and its little prickers are discouraging you. All right, spacing. How many can you put in a space and how far apart do they have to be? It depends. So each plant needs a certain amount of space, and generally the bigger the plant, the more space it needs. That just sort of makes sense, right? Like you're going to be pulling more nutrient from around it, everything like that. I grew Cracker Jack marigolds one year and did not read the packet well enough, and I planted them in amongst other things, and I had this monstrous 2.5 foot tall marigold with flowers on it that big. It was glorious. The other plants in that bed did not think he was glorious because I was intending to plant a little French marigold because I wanted the properties a marigold has, but I planted this monstrous beast who was great but didn't really fit the space. So knowing how big your plant is going to be, you can get dwarf tomatoes, you can get a bush tomato, or you can get a monstrous indeterminate tomato, and they all need different things and will fit in different spaces. If you don't know that, you might have interesting opportunities to learn something. All right, and then what are you going to do with it? So for lettuce, are you going to do come and cut again? The idea is you go out, you plant a little row, and then you chop the whole thing down to the base. You can just walk away with your box of lettuce. It grows back. You do it again. You get maybe 3 cuttings out of it, and then that space is done. And you're done in a month with that space. Or are you going to do head lettuce, where this sucker is going to sit in there, and it's going to take them 2 months to make this nice big head of romaine, big, all the different amazing, like the butternut or the butter crunch lettuce heads, you know, that are so good. That takes a different amount of time. That takes a different amount of space. So knowing that kind of information is really good too. Okay. So your seed packet spacing, so on your seed packet it's going to tell you how far apart it needs to be. And generally seed packets have the distance apart it needs to be with the idea that you're putting it in a row. So like your tomato needs to be 2 feet from the tomato next to it, from the tomato next to it, and they're assuming that you're going to have an 18-inch row separation. So in that case, each tomato has a 2-foot circle around it that it has the amount of space to grow. That's generally how a seed packet works. And then there's French intensive planting, which is another form of planting and spacing. And then there's square foot gardening. So those 3 things we're going to go over. And then the 4th one, actually it's not a 4th one, I'm just going to be asking Mr. Jean to help with this one, is traditional rows. So for me, I can't do a traditional row. I would be losing a lot of space. So this would be my raised bed, and I've got 2 rows of something, and that's what I have. It doesn't work that well for me. But for Mr. Jean, he has a lot of space. He said his garden was this big, like the size of this room big, and he does rows. And so for you, can you like describe what you were telling me a little bit earlier about your rows?
It won't be on your recorder.
Let me come.
It'll pick it up.
It'll pick up there? Yeah, so just talk at the camera.
I do rows. I rotate the plants according to what you just already covered. Also, I do companion gardening. So I plant potatoes, a row of potatoes, then a row of beans. It can be either green beans or dried beans, then a row of potatoes. I don't have a problem with potato bugs when I do that companion planting that way. But then I won't plant potatoes there next year. I'll plant something else there. I plant my squash and that more like hills in rows, but in hills so far apart as the seed packet says. And then I mulch. So
good, thank you. So that traditional spacing, if you have the space in the rows and you've got all of that, it's a great way to plant. And it's actually sometimes easier to get into the space because you've got your aisles and you're able to move about. And he has, what, 30-foot row of beans and potatoes and stuff like that. So he's putting away a lot of food. He's got a lot of food. I don't have that much food coming out of my garden because I don't have that much space or ability to. We're eating our beans off the bush and we're happy. I'm not canning them or putting them up as much because I don't have that space. So this one is follow directions on seed packet, generally planted in rows 18 inches apart. So you were saying, is your row about 18 inches apart or 2
foot?
2 foot apart. So then he can get up and down those rows until everything gets massive. And you have to get up and down the row to harvest. So the beans are getting harvested. If they're the green beans you eat, if they're shelling beans, you don't have as much time that you have to be in there because they and the potatoes, you just have to keep them happy until you're ready to harvest them. So that's one way you could do it. Another way is the square foot gardening way, and this is where you divide your garden up into little squares. And there are some issues with this in that a tomato needs more than one square of space, sort of thing. And so you have to kind of like take it with a grain of salt a little bit for some of your spacings, but as an overall, the gentleman, Bartholomew, I don't know if that's his first name or his last name, but he was an engineer, and he's like, there's got to be an easier way to do this. And so he created this system of planting and succession planting and all of those sorts of things. And there's books out that you can go online, there's a whole website, it's got classes and like all of the formulas. It's all set up for you. All you have to do is like plug and play. And so this is can be an easy way, and this also can be like if you're working with little kids, it's really easy. Like this square, you're planting your radishes in this square. It's very easy. They can understand it and follow it through. So for school gardens, this is something I encourage them to do because it's color in the lines. It's easy to do, and then you tuck in flowers everywhere, and it's great. And then you also can do your succession planting. You can do your rotation in that too. I don't do it as much, but here's a place where I did do it. I wanted to do a series of succession planting of different beets and radishes. And so I like, okay, this is this beets box, planting 4 beets in there, and then 2 weeks later I'm gonna plant more beets in there. And so I just took string and like made my little boxes with, I think it's a U-shaped hook that made it go. And for me, I needed the little boxes. I couldn't just do it. I needed my lines. It helped me do that. Okay, and then the French intensive planting is a little bit more of how I plant, just because it's it makes sense to me and it makes sense for me in my beds. And so it's a way of packing plants into your kitchen garden, planting with the intention of harvesting more often and a different variety of vegetables. So it's more of like you have to be in your garden more. Like you're pulling out this lettuce when it's done because the ones around it will need to be growing still. And so the grid for this looks like that. And optimal spacing is achieved by like, okay, my plant is going to be this big. Well, I'm going to plant the next plant right here, so I'm offsetting things by 6 inches. So it says it needs 8 inches to grow, or 6 inches to grow, or 4 inches to grow. I'm staggering them, kind of like a honeycomb. Like a honeycomb is the most efficient use of containers that has ever been Yahweh created. We stick with boxes. It's not efficient as the honeycomb has the most space in each container in the most packed in way ever. And so it's kind of imitating that property. And so this one you can fit 23 plants in the same area as the traditional rows, which was only 10.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you plant your plant closer to the edge of your raised bed because the plant will grow up and over it? So can you use some of that space?
So you just need to have that much earth available for it. So like if it says that it needs 6 inches to grow, you want to have at least 3 inches of soil on each side for it to grow. So like oftentimes that one little guy up at the top corner, he's close, the next one's popped in. Then he's back to close to the edge again and popped in.
But like a tomato that's 18 inches, would you still have to have 9 inches?
Yeah, because you want to be able to have that base it needs for the soil.
Your roots would dry out next to the edge of the bed.
Okay.
Yeah, and depending on what the edge of your bed is. You know, like if it's a mound berm kind of thing, it could go underneath your path and be all right. But if it's a raised bed like mine is, and it's right up against that edge, it's got hot wood that's next to it, so it would dry out that roots, and it would be missing half of the support it needs and stuff too. That's a really good question. Okay, and then this is my lettuce. I grew it from seed, and then I planted it and I had this just a glorious little, and then you go massacre it. You know, like it's not pretty anymore. But I often will go in and snip off the outer leaves of the lettuce, and then it keeps growing from the center, and I just can't massacre it. I just can't. And so I'm cutting out the outer leaves of them, and then it keeps growing. Do I have time to do this? No. Do I want to do this? Yes, because this is what makes me happy. And so then here's a comparison of the 3 different ways of growing. None of them is the perfect way of doing something. They're all different ways of doing something depending on what you have access to, what your space is, what your goals are, and what you're actually growing. Can I grow tomato plants in that intensive gardening situation? No, they're too big. They need more space than that. They need to go more like the traditional rose idea because of the amount of space they need. Can I grow lettuce? Can I grow some of my brassicas? Can I grow onions like that? Absolutely, that's the best way to grow that to get the most of the space. So it depends on what you need and what you want. And it's going to change depending as you move your things around. All right, how you guys doing? All right, succession planting. So this is the idea that you are growing more plants in the same space by taking advantage of the length of time it takes them to grow, and also some things like the squash takes a really long time to get going to cover that space. So you've got a lot of bare space for a month. You're planting radishes to take up that bare space, and then the radishes are done about the time the squash takes over. So that's a form of succession planting. Other things are like my little beets. Beets take, I think, 6 weeks to go from start to end. So if I'm growing beets every 2 weeks, these guys are coming out of the ground, these guys are going in, they're getting big, and then I can start over at the top end again and start growing like that. And then I will have beets all summer, and we'll be able to use them in all the different things. So that's another form of succession planting. And then that was the second one. And then the third one was the one with the squash. The first one is, so like in the very beginning, I could plant, we're picking on radishes again, it's a cool season crop. I can plant radishes or spinach in my space before I put the tomatoes in that space. Because tomatoes need to wait until it's, I think the ground has to be like 65 to 70 degrees, 3 inches down, 4 inches down before you put your tomato plant in there. Well, the radishes and spinach are perfectly happy with a little frost on them or cold mornings, so that space I can't even start using it until the middle of May. Well, you can move your soil in April. Like, you can work it. So if I'm planting that up, and then once we get to May, I'm putting my tomato plants in, I'm harvesting the rest of it as my tomato plant gets bigger, and then we get to August, September, I can maybe put some spinach plants that I had grown, put them in the ground once we're getting, you know, closer to frost and the plant gets going, and then frost comes, my tomato plants are kaput, but my little spinach plants are like, whee, let's go, and we have some greens in the fall. So that's another form of succession planting. So there's different ways that you can get the most out of your space, especially if you have small space. It makes it a little easier to focus on that, because if you have gobs of space, you may not have the time or energy to get that minutia on it, because we're just putting spinach there and it's going to be empty for the rest of the season or something, you know. So these are different ways of succession planting. it helps you to not have all your harvest at the same time, because sometimes people put everything in the garden and then around end of July, beginning of August, you just have more stuff than you know what to do with, and your kids are going back to school, you've got all this stuff, and you're like, I've got to can 85,000 quarts of something, and you're just giving away stuff because you don't know what to do with it in the amounts that you have.
Zucchini.
What's that?
Zucchini.
Where you're a gorilla bugging your neighbors with a zucchini on their porch. You just run away. So yeah, and this way is a way that you can kind of spread out that harvest a little bit so that you're getting 4 beets a week, not 87 beets. You know, what do you do with 87 beets? Well, 4 beets, 2 of them go in my smoothie, the other 2 go in the root bag, whatever, you know, kind of thing. Oh, that one came from West Virginia Extension, was all of the words. Alright, so tomatoes, take advantage of the differing maturity rates. That's the difference between a determinate tomato and an indeterminate tomato. So the determinate usually sets all its fruit at the same time. So your Romas, your sauce tomatoes, great for that. You want a whole bunch of tomatoes at once because when you make sauce, you need a whole bunch. Your indeterminate, you want to eat all summer long. Interplant or successional sowings, your lettuce, your beets, carrots, radishes, they're all little things. Basically anything 30 days around crop size can go in the middle of everything else. Brassicas, all of those guys are resistant to cold weather, so put them at the front and the end of your seasons on the outsides of your hot stuff. And that's from Joe Gardner blog. Joe Gardner's a great, his name's Joe Lampa. He has like a TV show and a blog and all the things. He's very city-fied for people who aren't, like, he's very encouraging for people who aren't in this all the time, but he's got a lot of really good information, and he's fun, and he's got beautiful gardens and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool when you go and start looking at what is out there and information. Some really neat things. Companion planting. So Jean actually brought a book, Tomatoes Love Carrots. There's a bunch of different really cool books that have all the lists and things of what likes what. And the idea of a companion planting is you plant 2 things next to each other or near each other. Usually it has to be within 3 rows, which 6 feet. It has to be within 6 feet of the plant you're trying to affect. And it does something to help the other plant, whether that is giving it nitrogen, which would be like your bean, it's emitting some sort of smell, or it deters pests, or it overwhelms pests' ability to find the plant that it's looking for, or it deters nematodes, which is what a French marigold also does, as beyond just being smelly. So there's some known positive relationship between the 2 plants that makes this list. So this massive chart is unreadable. I totally understand that, but I got it from One Creative Mommy. That's her blog, and if you go on there and you look up companion planting, but there's also lots of books. If you go anywhere online and look up a companion chart, some of them you have to take with a grain of salt because not all of them are proven science, but like the majority of them, if it gets repeated several times, you're good. So what this does is it has all of basil, beans, broccoli, carrots, basil, beans, broccoli, carrots, and then if it's happy together, it's green. If it's bad together, it's red. Different aspects of that. And then the other one is insect repelling plants. So chives repel aphids, carrot rust fly, and Japanese beetles. So chives are a little perennial plant. Tuck those in around your garden somewhere. Cilantro repels aphids, potato beetles, and spider mites. So it's the scent of it. Dill attracts predatory wasps that eat caterpillars and repels aphids and spider mites. So these teeny tiny little wasps, they're about this big, and they're little black guys, and you always see them on very open-faced flowers. Those guys are like the stealth I don't know, ninjas of the garden. And you never want to ever hurt one of those, because those little guys lay eggs on caterpillars and they go inside and they eat the caterpillar from the inside out. And you're like, yay! I'm weird, but yay! Because they eat the things that are eating your plants that you don't want. And so by setting up different plants, like alyssum is a really, really good parasitic wasp pollinator plant that you can do. And so a lot of the things that are repelling plants are smelly. They're very smelly. They're in the allium family. Let's see, we got garlic, leeks, marigolds, nasturtiums, oregano, and sage. They're very smelly, a lot of your herb kind of things. And you can eat them. So it's not just pretty, you can eat them as well. What's that?
And yarrow.
And yarrow, yes. So, can you eat yarrow?
Make tea out of it.
You make tea out of yarrow? I'm pretty sure you can probably do anything with any plant. But yes, so yarrow is a really good open-faced flower. It's an umbel flower that's good for your beneficials and stuff like that. Timothy's always like, if it doesn't have food value, I don't want it. But this is my garden bed that I had a few years ago, and I was like, oh, that came out amazing. I need to do that again. So in this picture, edible, I have Swiss chard and nasturtium. It's the thins in the back and the big flat leaves. The nitrogen fixer is the scarlet runner bean, which is going up the right-hand side. That's purple and has big, beautiful flowers, and the hummingbirds love it. Technically, you can eat the seed, but there's a little bit of like, it has to be like when everything's just right. You don't get it too late, too early, or all of that. Pest control, marigolds and alyssum. Alyssum's the little white guys. This is a dark red marigold. Nectar plants, I've got the little snapdragons, which are the purple, kind of the pink and white ones. There's a delphinium, which is the purple, and then osteospermum, which is that daisy looking guy. And so that is all mixed into one of my tall raised beds, and it's pretty, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just buzzing with all sorts of things. And so gardenings don't have to be ugly. All right, so I'm doing good. Yes. Drawing mats. Here we go. We finally get to draw things. Okay, so this is my art class. I get to make y'all do art class. So I work off of graph paper because it just makes it super easy to make a straight line. You've got a grid on there. It all works. And I have found that you want to make it as big as possible. So like if you have a giant garden like Mr. Gene does, he's going to want to break his down into multiple pieces of it if he wants to get smaller kind of things. Because I have beds, instead of doing my, like that big triangle, if I tried to make my garden on that big triangle map, you wouldn't be able to see anything. I have, this is all from last year. These are all my beds, and I have each one like a 6-inch square kind of thing. And then I create my hard lines with pen, so my edges, they're solid. Like my bed's not getting any bigger, it's not getting any smaller. This is the size of my bed, it's in pen. And then everything else I do in pencil, because then you can erase it. And I just draw out and write everything on that. And then if you don't have a layout already, play around with it. That's where like you can make shapes. You can, you know, like, okay, how far in can I reach? Like I have, my biggest bed is 4.5 feet wide. It is 6 inches too wide for me to just easily reach into the base. And I'm always like balancing out a log and about doing a base plant in. It's just a little too big. And so that extra 6 inches of space we found out actually is an impediment to me using it well than if we hadn't had that. It's a tremendous amount of space when you look at it, you know, 6 inches by 84 feet. That's a lot of space. But if it makes it hard to use it, it just kind of thing. So if we redo that bed, or if anything happens, we might like bring it in a little bit, or do something like mound it more so it's easier to reach the middle kind of thing. But if you have little kids or munchkins working on a bed, make it 3 feet wide. So then you can reach into the middle of it and be able to do it. If you are stiff and you can't get down easy and you're going to need to be sitting on a bucket most of the time when you're doing stuff, make it 3 feet wide so then you can reach in. Make it so it's easy for you to do. If you can handle a 2 foot wide bed, make it 2 feet wide. It's whatever works best for you. And let's see, this is my 84 foot bed. I have it split into 4 sections, and then I have a little like path between each section so I can get across it without stepping on soil. And so I have a log on the east end and I have a log on the west end, and then we have some patio blocks down the middle, and so this is my bed. And it is 4 feet. I did add that extra 6 inches on there because I figure it'll get used. It always does. And then I have enough space underneath of it that I can actually write my notes in there. So when I plant my tomatoes, for me, when I start my seeds, I just I have little numbers on my thing, and I just stick my tags in. They all have a number, and that number corresponds to a grid paper of all the things. Because I use my tags over and over, they don't always end up with the same plant. So then I write down my number, I write down my circles and stuff like that. So there's my big bed. This is my 4x8 beds, lots of room to write. I've got things like my stairs is right next to it on the west side. So I know that bed, number 7, gets shaded a lot faster and quicker than the other ones. So sometimes I don't plant big monster tomatoes in that one because it's not going to get enough sun. My house and the deck is right above the back of those. So I can't plant things all the way to the back of that bed unless it's a vine that can reach out and get up to see some sunlight. So I also have like where north is. So you know where your sun's coming from. You know the orientation of it. And then like this is what it looks like this was a bed of all solanaceous, it looks like. So I had tomatillos in there, I had all my big giant tomatoes in there, and then on the lower one I had beans, cucumbers, onions, and then beets and chard and carrots and stuff like that. Oh, funny story. I thought I had saved onion seed from the year before. I planted it all out, had like 200 plants in the ground. I'm like, they're not making onions. Like they weren't forming up. They're just making lots of green hair. Turns out I had accidentally mixed up my purple chive seed, mistaken it for onion seed, and now I have 200 purple chive plants. So if anybody needs purple chive, please come see me. I have way too many plants, and they all have to leave because they're all still in the ground and I need to plant something. So if you want to make like a wall of China purple chive, got you covered. Which is another thing. Pay attention to your seeds. Alright, and then here's my other one. So I've got like on the ends I have my stuff going up and all my different things like that. Okay? Does that make sense? And then learn. And I'm sure everyone here who's ever gotten good at something, you are constantly learning and trying to explore new ways of doing things and finding little tricks and things that make it different and better for you. And one of the things that I have learned is like I take notes, and every year I'm like, oh, I did good taking notes, and the next year I go back and I'm like, and then, like, what happened? You wrote down this, but like, was it good? Was it bad? Which tomato was the best? All of those sorts of things. And so I actually have a notebook, and it's my garden notebook. And I have everything in this from all of the years in the past. So, like, my why, goals, plans, questions right up front. So when I open this up, why am I doing this? I have my current year's plan. So this is where this year's plan and all of my maps and stuff like that will be right up front. I can write on it when I'm planting my seeds. I can make notes in here. When anything's happened, we can make notes in there. It's easy to take out, put on my clipboard. The past year's plan is right behind it. So that way I know what I did do, what happened last year, all my maps from the year before. Where's the garlic again? Oh yeah, it's in this bed. All of that kind of stuff. And then after that, I have plant lists. So I have lists of like, this one is in a pollinator plant list. This is my weed survey that I took of my yard, where all the weeds that are edible, I wrote all of them out to see it. This is all my house plants. There's not too many of there, is there? And then I have research info. So this would be where I would put like my companion planting charts, my different things I've learned and stuff. And then I have all my past year's plans. So it's 2021, 2019, like all the way through. And because I do follow the Shemitah years, I need to know what year it is. And so this year is year 15, year 1 of my 3rd cycle. Because the Shemitah year is every 7 years. And so for me to land rest, I need to know where I am in that, because on year 6, I want to plan for next year's, I need to plant some more, I need to do extra things, I need to make sure I have some really good kale in there so I can use that over next year, that kind of thing. And so that to me has been super helpful. So however you do it, take notes, keep them, put them in something, and then use it. And then it's amazing how much information you gain over time by being able to go back and look at it. Which tomatoes did we want? And then also take pictures. Going back to put pictures onto my slideshows, I'm like, oh wow, that was so much better than I thought. Look at the beautiful things. You forget. Like I was looking at piles of, for the one picture with all the tomatoes, the pile of tomatoes with a little smiley tomato. Like I was looking for a picture of produce, and I'm like, wow, we've harvested a lot of things, some really cool things over the years. How cool is that? And you go back and look at it, you can remember His goodness and His mercy and the blessing that we've had. And yeah, did you have to put in work? Yes, but He made it grow. He provided the rain. He has provided a way for us to grow things, and to remember that is a really cool thing. And so I encourage you to do that. And then, any of the stuff, as long as you know what you're looking for, you can find anything on the internet. Like, now that you know the words companion planting, you can go find every chart under the sun for that. Now that you know what rotation is, you can go find instructions and things like that. And then, you're going to mess up. Every year we learn something new. Like one year we'll have something just be spectacularly awesome. We're like, all right, we got it. The next year that same thing is like, but something else did amazing. And so it's always learning something, which is kind of funny. Okay, which thing's going to do awesome this year? Which thing is going to be like, yeah. And it keeps you humble too. Because I absolutely know I am not the best gardener. I'm not up here because I'm the best gardener. I'm just up here because I like to talk about things and put together slideshows. But it's just, you're going to mess something up. Something's not going to work. But it's always an opportunity to learn. And it's always an opportunity to get better, right? So there's no shame in failing. And sometimes they're really funny. So next class is March 10 at seed starting and a seed swap. So if you have seeds to share, you can bring them. I'm going to bring a bunch of stuff that I've saved. And I'm going to bring like some of my paraphernalia of how I start seeds, because in March is when you'd be starting seeds if you have the ability or capacity to do that. And thank you.